Hi, we want to welcome you to the Buckman Community Association co-hosting of our mayoral candidate forum with the League of Women Voters. My name is Susan Lindsay. I'm the co-chair of the Buckman Community Association. We're very glad that you're here. You're always welcome to come here. And one thing I want to make clear, a couple of things, is that we do at the BCA meetings, we always have a couple of ground rules. And so, you know, we'll have the sign kind of in the back. I don't really need to go over it, do I? But basically what it says is, be respectful, talk about the issues, talk about things that concern you, but let's just make sure that we're respectful at all times, because that's really very important to us. At this time now, I'd like to introduce Margaret Knoll, who I'm very excited to be working with on this co-hosting of the mayoral forum.
Thank you very much, Susan. And as she said, I'm Margaret Knoll. I'm president of the League of Women Voters of Portland. The League is a nonpartisan organization that works to help citizens make informed choices in elections. We do not endorse any candidate or political party, but rather we give voters the information they need to select a candidate. Membership information is available on our website, lwvpdx.org, or at the table in the back of the room. We thank the Carol and Velma Sailing Foundation, the Rose E. Tucker Charitable Trust, the Multnomah Bar Foundation, Metro East Community Media, and Paloma Clothing for their generous contributions to our education fund to make these forums possible. And we thank the Buckman Community Association for the opportunity to partner with them to present this forum. Metro East Community Media is recording today's forum. It will be available for on-demand viewing on our website, lwvpdx.org, and from the website of Metro East Community Media, metroeast.org. To view the forum on local access cable TV, please see the playback schedule posted on our website. I will now turn the forum over to our moderator from the Buckman Community Association, Adam Zucker.
Good evening. I am Adam Zucker of the Buckman Community Association. Seated next to me are the mayoral candidates, seated in the order that they will appear on your ballots. Welcome. Unfortunately, Sarah, we just heard, had a family emergency, and so will not be attending. Ted Wheeler had a prior obligation and is hopefully going to be joining us around 8:30 tonight. And we hope that Patty and Stephen join us also sometime through the evening. So each of the candidates will be giving a 1-minute introductory statement, followed by questions that we have prepared. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each question. The order that we select candidates to answer is random, except that we ensured as many as possible are to answer first and last. To keep things more interesting, not all candidates will answer all questions, but all candidates will answer questions about the same topic areas, which are the environment, homelessness, economic development, and affordable housing. We will next have questions from the audience, which will be selected from the ones that you've placed in the basket in the back of the room. Finally, candidates will each be given 1 minute closing statement. And now, for our opening statements, we will do this in the order in which the candidates form appear on your ballot. And we'll start with Bruce. You have 1 minute for your opening statement.
Okay. I'm Bruce Broussard, and first I'd like to thank the Buckman folks for putting this on. I think it's very important. 1 minute is really not a long time. I'm a talk show host. It takes me an hour just to start. But I will say to you that just a few backgrounds right up front. I'm a restaurant owner. We own a restaurant, my wife and I. I do as I'm told there. And I guess just briefly, I'm a former Marine. I spent 10 years in the Marine Corps. I came here as a Marine recruiter. I've done a couple of things. I used to own the Portland Observer newspaper. I think that was really neat as far as I was concerned. I built a senior citizen complex. I've owned several businesses. I've been in construction business. I can go on and on and on, but my point is that I have the background, if you will, and the insight of a lot of the issues that were going on here. I've run before on a number of occasions, and that's been good for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. Jules?
Well, thank you all. Thank you to the League of Women Voters. Thank you to the Buckman Community Association, all of you for coming out this evening. I'm Jules Bailey. I'm currently a Multnomah County Commissioner, so this is a bit of a home game for me, although it's throwing me off a little bit to not be in my normal seat. Yeah, exactly. But I've been on the Multnomah County Commission for a couple years now. I, before that, served 3 terms in the Oregon State Legislature representing this area, inner southeast and northeast Portland, the neighborhood that I grew up in. And I'm an economist professionally. And I decided to run for mayor because I believe that Portland is really at a turning point. We're moving from what has essentially been a big small town to being what's really a big global city. We've got 1 million new people that are projected to move here over the coming decades. We have to ensure that this is a city that still works for everybody, where housing is affordable, where jobs are available, and where we have great public schools that people like all of us in the community can send our kids to. I'd be honored to be your mayor and be able to work on these challenges, and I hope that my track record speaks for itself. Thank you.
Hi, guys. My name's Bim Ditson. I am a small business owner, and I have been for 15 years. I'm a musician. I spend my life in the arts and music world of Portland, working with all the amazing people that make our city the destination that it is. I'm interested in running for mayor because I want to give a voice to the cultural identity of Portland, and the way that I see that that can happen is through electing a candidate that is not taking money from the special interests that oppose our local business and our local culture, and that's what I'm doing through my campaign finance, which is that I'm only taking money from human beings, and I'm limiting that money to the $50 that every Oregonian has access to through the Oregon political tax credit. I hope that you can all keep an open heart and an open mind when you're looking into candidates, and you can base your decision on who stands for what you believe in rather than how much money they have. I think it's really important. Thanks.
You guys got to share.
We get to share. It's okay because we actually have a lot in common. I'm actually a musician like Bim, and I've also limited my contributions in the campaign as well. My name's David Shore, and I'd like to be your mayor. I'm an assistant attorney general right now at the Oregon Department of Justice, and I believe my legal training and my work on social justice qualify me very well to be the next mayor of Portland. The central plank of my platform is about housing, primarily the affordable housing problem in our city that I believe is probably the biggest concern for most of our residents. My proposal for that is unique in that it brings in new revenue from a new income tax on the top 1% of income earners. I'm sure we'll get to talk about that more as we go forward. But I do want you to know that you have choices in this election. It's great that you're here. I want to thank the League of Women Voters and the Buckman Community Association for making this possible. And I hope that you will all have a chance to get fully informed before you cast your votes. And I hope that you will find a candidate that is able to meet your needs and that will carry your values forward to City Hall. Thank you.
Hey guys, my name is Jesse Sponberg, and if you don't know who I am already, then I'm really failing. I'd like to thank the Buckman Association, the Oregon League of Women Voters, and Adam for letting us be a part of this. So here's the thing. I promised myself that every time I came to one of these things, I would make up a new introduction, because I'm getting sick of everybody else's old ones. So check this out. I'm the only candidate up here that represents the revolution. Okay, with my actions, with my physical body, and with every time I go to City Hall, I represent a revolution. So we can keep pushing this different hole, same shovel, or same hole, different shovel. I'm the only candidate that sleeps on sidewalks with homeless people, and I can say a lot in 15 seconds. I'm the guy that slept under the trees to save the trees in Eastmoreland, and I would represent an absolute change of culture in the way that this city is run. And thank you for your time. Yeah.
Good evening, and again, thank you for being here. I'm Deborah Harris. I am on the journey, not a race, but I'm in a journey for mayor. How many of you are not really satisfied with things that have been accomplished from previous mayors? Can I get a show of hands? I agree. And the purpose of my running for mayor, my candidacy, basically, I want to help us build a healthy city, Portland to continue to be a healthy city. And one of my focuses, basically, sometimes people want to know, well, what are your experiences? I'm a business specialist. I graduated, received my master's of public administration from Portland State University. I've managed multi-million-dollar businesses. But basically, one of my brands is single-member districts, and I'll discuss that further throughout the forum. Single-member district, where we have 95. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you, candidates, for being very timely. We've got a full schedule, so we appreciate that. So let's just jump right into the first question. And as I mentioned before, the questions are going to have been randomly selected for several of the candidates. So not every candidate will be answering each question. So this first question is for Jules and Bim. The remaining open spaces in Portland are under threat because of a perceived lack of industrial lands. For example, the city of Portland upzoned Colwood Golf Course to industrial use and is proposing to upzone a natural area on the Broadmoor Golf Course similarly. At the same time, property already designated for industrial use is being converted to other purposes. For example, relocation of the post office to the Colwood Golf Course. How do you propose meeting the need for industrial land without encroaching on the natural areas and parks? Jules?
First of all, we need to have a mayor who's willing to work regionally on regional strategies. We have a regional economy, and we do have industrial capability that's available. And in fact, when you look at the McKinsey report on industrial land capability, some of our Tier 1 industrial land, especially on scalable sites, is in East Multnomah County. And so it's a matter of a mayor who's willing to work directly with some of our partners outside of Portland and make sure that we have a good shared strategy. I also think that there's an opportunity for us to use some of the capacity in the land that we have here for more equitable distribution of services. So right now, the Portland Parks Bureau has an equity campaign around expanding parks access, especially in East Portland, where there isn't historically been a lot of parks. Some of that is about using some of the vacant land that's there, some of which is smaller parcel industrial land, and doing park conversion there. I think we have to balance the fact that while we do need spaces for industry and for businesses to grow, that we also need places for people to live and to provide livability for people, particularly in underserved areas like East County. I'll be a mayor that prioritizes that.
Thank you, Jules. Now, Bim?
You know, I'm not an expert in how to do this. You know, when it comes down to it, I think that those are some good ideas. I'm a little bit hesitant to get behind the idea of when we're talking about creating housing, we're only talking about creating it in poor neighborhoods. I think that a key thing here, when we have less land than we need, is to get denser, and we have to look at that in a real way. What does that look like in every neighborhood in Portland? I think it's a shared responsibility, and we need to have a mayor that's willing to make those tough calls and say, when we're building the luxury housing that we're building, that's going into luxury neighborhoods instead of going into neighborhoods that really don't need 300% MFI housing in their neighborhood. They need things that you can afford. So I guess to answer you, I don't have that answer, and I'm okay with not having it. I think that my ability to stand for Portlanders will mean that I can ask Portland what they would want to do and follow through on it.
Okay, our next question will be for Bruce, David, Jesse, and Deborah. What are your priorities for the cleanup of the Portland Superfund site? Please address toxic contaminant removal or sequestration and criteria for safe fish consumption in your response.
Okay, I guess I'll start on that particular issue. I'll answer it this way. First off, you know, when you're thinking about issues, you really don't have the time. An issue like this is a very serious issue, and you need more time to do this. And that's one of the reasons why I felt, as mayor, one of the things I'd like to change is to make sure the candidates get a sort of an orientation. Anyone wanting to run for office should be given the opportunity to understand what the issues are as it relates to the city of Portland. And this is a very serious situation. And so I guess my answer to that is that, in all due respect, I too am trying to divide the city in such a fashion that these issues will be given opportunity community to be discussed. Again, too, I would like to divide the city also into 4 different segments, and I think that would be a way, if you will, if that issue is in that respective area, that would be more time, if you will, to discuss the issue and get it back to the mayor's office, which I will then manage. Thank you.
Thank you. David?
So the Superfund is obviously a very complex issue, and the resolution of this is something that's been ongoing in development for a very long time. I think what I've heard from the community is that the current proposed plan, where we're at right now, doesn't do enough removal. That people are concerned about the long-term consequences of leaving a large amount of the pollution that has been in our environment in place. And we're talking about right now leaving up to maybe 80% of the pollution on site in our river. And personally, I think that's probably a bit high. I think reading through the proposal so far, it seems to me that the sequestration options are riskier in some ways than a lot of the removal options. And I'm hopeful that as we go through the process, there's a lot of stakeholders involved, but as a mayor, that I can emphasize that we do not want to have this problem come back. And that's my concern. If we rely on sequestration, that we'll end up having to deal with this problem again down the line. So if we're going to solve this, if we're going to clean it up, we need to clean it up once and for all.
Thank you. Jesse?
I'm so glad you asked me this question, because I can set myself apart as the only candidate that really understands our water and understands the cleanup. And I can tell you where our water goes when it hits a raindrop on a conifer at Bull Run, all the way through your system, all the way where they add the chemicals at Lusted Hill, all the way to the reservoir components, all the way to where it hits over Willamette. Now, my vision for a revitalized Portland includes a revitalized Willamette. That means full cleanup of the Superfund. So let me explain to you the difference in what David was talking about. So the chemicals and the pollutants that we have are heavy minerals. They're hydrophobic. That's the word you need to know, hydrophobic, right? So that means they run from the water, and they lower themselves into our sediment. So then there's a division really quick. Steve Novick just wants to clean up the top of the water, right? Because that's cheaper and that's easier and that gets everybody away. You need to get all the way down there. It needs to be a full cleanup. And there are parties that are responsible, and this goes back to the 40s, 50s, and 60s. We know the numbers, and I'm going to cheat right here. We know the numbers, and we know the people that are responsible. And what we need is a candidate that is not only beholden to the idea
Thank you,
of clean water, but the idea of holding the same people that donate to our campaigns responsible. I'm so sorry. I'll make my next one shorter. I promise. It's important to me, though.
Well, thank
Deborah?
you. Thank you. Before you can take action, you have to know where the root of the problem is. So the first thing that I would do would have an analysis done, quantitative, qualitative analysis, to see exactly where we need to start and the tools we need. Definitely not being the specialist in this area, I would surround myself with very, very quality staff who's very familiar with every detail of the cleanup. And one other thing I would do, this would fall into the category of the single-member district. I need to make sure that each of our 95 neighborhoods is well informed of what's going on. And by having a representative from those neighborhoods, we would discuss the issues that's going on, making sure everyone's knowledgeable, do our analysis, and then from that point, when I determine exactly what it is we need to do, we would take steps from that. I wouldn't plunge right into it. It definitely is very important. Thank you.
Okay. Our next question will be for Bim, Jesse, and David. Last fall, the mayor declared an emergency regarding homelessness, prohibiting camping in the city parks, yet allowing sleeping on the sidewalks as long as tents and other structures are brought down daily from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. So far, these rules do not seem to be followed. What would your approach be to address Portland's homeless and open camping? Bim, we'll start with you.
Okay, so basically when you have a problem and a dramatic problem like this, we don't really have any other answers for people other than letting them use tents in the street. And I think we need to realize that that's a dramatic solution, but it's an important solution because these people have nowhere else to go. So I do support allowing people to stay overnight in temporary structures on our streets. I don't support the systemic failures that have led to that situation. I think that the things that have led to that do include too much of a tightness between our local government and big business interests that would prefer to allow people to become homeless than to build the housing that they need. We should look at the PDC in this case, and we should really consider, instead of having business interests and people who are tight with the local politicians running the show, we should have community leaders running the show. And that's what I would be able to do, is set up a system in which we can have communities decide how to solve problems.
So clearly, what got us here was a lot of mistakes. There were a lot of shortcomings in the approach that we've taken to homelessness over the years. We had a 10-year plan to end homelessness, and it didn't really work out. We've still got just as many people sleeping on the streets as we had before we started that. And I'm concerned that the plan that's before us now is not ambitious enough to actually solve this problem. We're being told that over the course of the next few years that we can cut homelessness on our streets in half. And I'm afraid that if that is as ambitious as we're going to be, then we will have to live with people living on our streets indefinitely. We need to make an investment as a public, as a community, to make sure that there's housing for everyone. Now, we know in the short term that we are not going to be able to put enough housing online for everyone. There are going to be people sleeping on our streets. What we need to do is to try to make that as safe as possible and have as little impact on our neighborhoods as possible. So we need to be proactive about identifying places where people can have organized encampments, where they can have services provided so that they aren't having an impact on sidewalks in the community. Ultimately, it's not the best solution, but it's the best thing that we can do right now in the immediate future until we have housing.
Thank you. Jesse?
Adam, could you read that to me again so I can maximize my 1 minute, please? I don't want to just be all over the place.
Last fall, the mayor declared an emergency regarding homelessness, prohibiting camping in the city parks, yet allowing sleeping on the sidewalks, as long as tents and other structures were removed or brought down daily from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. So far, these rules have not seemed to be followed. What would your approach be to address this homelessness and open camping?
Okay. Let me pick my words carefully right now. That's disgusting. With the amount of money that we have, and the amount of brains in the community, and the amount of solutions that we have, and the amount of people that we have showing up to city council and county council begging and crying and paying triple-figure salaries to these committees. It's absolutely deplorable and shameful that those are the best solutions that we can come from. Have you ever tried to go to a job interview after you slept in a tent on a sidewalk and then had to be up at 7 o'clock? There's nowhere to go to the bathroom downtown, let alone shave. There's nowhere to shave alongside the bike path. These are not solutions. We need transitional housing. We need more solutions like Hazelnut Grove, and it's absolutely deplorable. And I promise, as your mayor, I will have too much respect for the citizens of Portland to use that as the culmination of my 10-year plan. At the buzzer. Shout out to the timekeeper lady.
The next question will be for Jules, Deborah, and Bruce. Related to the homelessness emergency, what would be your plan to provide services and shelters for homelessness throughout the city, not concentrated only in a few areas? We'll start with Jules.
We know what works when it comes to addressing homelessness in our community. We need more emergency shelter that's connected, that's low barrier emergency shelter, connected to mental health and addiction services with a pipeline into low income housing. We know that works because we set out a model through the Home for Everyone committee where we said, on which I serve, in which we made a commitment to end veterans homelessness by the end of 2015. It was a very difficult goal, but we're in the process of being certified by the federal government as having met that commitment. But what we need to do is ensure that we have communities throughout Portland that have access to those services. We recently bought an old strip club out at 168th and Stark, turned it into our first 24-hour-a-day, 365-day-a-year family shelter. But we also need to ensure that we're investing in other opportunities. And just today, right here, sitting at this dais at Multnomah County Commission, we just purchased a facility on southeast Milwaukee to be able to turn into a permanent place for women and couples who are on the streets to replace some of the capacity that's coming offline in the Sears Armory.
Thank you. Deborah?
Well, first of all, single-member district would somewhat avoid or prevent concentrated homelessness from being concentrated or put into one area. And further, rid of the problem is when we make these decisions behind the walls of City Hall and not include the neighborhoods, then that's where the problem is. Had we gone to the communities and the districts and the representatives in this proposed plan discuss this within the communities, then everyone would not be concentrated in one area. We'd have a vast number of ideas, and then we can select from those ideas rather than the mayor saying, this is what we're going to do. Has the mayor been in that situation? No. Do you have friends or know someone who's been in those situations? Yes. So going into the community when we have these issues, which the issues has been there for quite a while. Thank you.
Okay, on that particular issue, as mayor, the first thing I would do, I would look at Wapato. I had to find Wapato first. I mean, everywhere I went into the city trying to get some information in terms of how many homeless people do we have, how many veterans do we have, I got no information at all. I mean, the city commissioners would not even talk to me. I didn't get any information, but I will say this. The first day as mayor, I will get them off the street first. I'll go to Wapato, and what we'll do, the first thing is that we got to figure out who's out there. How many veterans do we have out there? How many mental illness people we have out there? We need to know who's out on the streets. And I think the way we can do that, we start off with Wapato, maybe bring in the National Guard and use some of the armories and whatever, but find out who is on the streets and then go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. For the remaining questions, we're going to let the candidates kind of spread out their arms a little bit. We'll give them 1 minute and 15 seconds for each question. So this, just a little bit of elbow room. This next question is for David, Jules, and Deborah. How should the city regulate and/or encourage the sharing economy? How will the city's choice of winners and losers in this arena affect the lives of Portland residents, our tax revenue, and our local economy? I'll start with David.
So when we talk about the sharing economy, that can mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. But essentially, to a certain extent, what we're talking about is disruptive technology and the impact that that has on our environment and on our society and on our commerce in our city. Some of the big examples of that here have been the network transportation companies, obviously, has been the big issue in Portland. And I don't believe that that was handled as well as it could have been. Unfortunately, what we've done in the way that we've handled that is we've given an advantage to new players, and we've disadvantaged folks that have already made a huge investment in serving our community. And I think we need to be careful about that when new disruptive technologies and new service economy options come into our market, that we don't allow those to take people out of good employment that is serving their needs if it's going to disadvantage the public. And for an example, the insurance requirements that we've imposed on the network transportation companies are more lenient. It lowers the cost for them in relative to our taxi companies. It gives them a competitive advantage, but it doesn't provide any additional benefit to the public. And I think that's really what we need to focus on, is make sure that if we are going to accommodate this new service economy, that we do so in a way that serves the needs of the public first.
Jules?
There are a lot of opportunities with the sharing economy, but there are also a lot of challenges and costs. And what we need to make sure is that as we have an expansion of those kinds of businesses here in Portland, that we have clear regulations that reflect the potential of the cost to the community and that we're enforcing those regulations. There are a lot of people, when you're talking about, for example, taxi drivers, that have invested a lot of money and a lot of time in clear training, clear regulations, and purchasing the ability to be able to drive a taxi. We need to honor that investment that was made. There's also a reason that there are regulations on that industry in the first place. There's been a history of abuse in the past, and so we need to make sure that there's clear regulations going forward. When we're talking about Airbnb, we have rules and laws on the books around things like the fact that you have to live in the home where you have an Airbnb residence, that you can't do it in large multifamily structures, and yet I hear anecdotally all the time about that being violated. Well, obviously that contributes to the housing crisis. So I think it's important that we not only set clear regulation that defines the rules of the game so that we can benefit from the good side of the sharing economy, but also that we are holding folks accountable and enforcing the laws that are on the books to ensure that those regulations are met.
Thank you. Deborah?
Okay, again, you're probably going to get tired of me saying this, but the sharing the economy, the single-member district creates data and analysis to better empower sharing economy. The economy is using state and federal laws and policies to implement the sharing process. And by us having single-member districts, in single-member districts, we have representatives elected from each of the neighborhoods. You decide who is going to be a reflection of your neighborhood, who is going to support you, who is going to take care of you and listen to your issues and come to me when we have those issues. So sharing the economy, again, allows us to do analysis on the different policies and procedures that are in place to put these hybrids together in one place, sharing, the gift giving of the economy. Thank you.
Thank you. The next question will be for Jesse, Bruce, David, and Bim.
I thought you forgot about me.
How would you assess the city's performance in awarding contracts to minority and women-owned firms? What improvements, if any, would you recommend? Jesse?
You don't want to hear my opinions about the golf course. You don't want to hear my opinions about Wapato. Check this out. I actually have this written down on my thing. Once again, I have to remind you guys that I'm not a big written policy, come up here and impress you with my policy guy. I'm a person that will change the culture in this city, and I understand that we have an abysmal record of hiring minority companies and women-owned companies, and it's written right here. It says target minority companies, target women. Don't just say that that's going to be your goal. Actually make that a benchmark, and when you're the mayor, you have so many people on your staff. You just find one person and you say, hey, listen, you make sure that we're doing this. And if you don't make sure that we're upholding these, then you're fired. I mean, I'm sure it's not that easy, but I mean, the city of Portland can't seem to fire anybody, but especially Mark Kruger. Ding. So what you have to do is you actually have to target those and not just give the same lip service that we always do, like these candidates that say, I'm going to have a diverse staff, and then you look at their campaign staff and it's all white people. I'm not that guy.
Thank you, Jesse. Bruce?
I beat you.
Okay. Well, in that particular area, I'm pretty familiar with that particular area. At one point in time, I used to, well, I created a trade publication called the American Contractor Publication, which was an insert in the Daily Journal of Commerce. And I'll say this today, that I think when we started this whole issue, we pushed the idea of the contracting as an entree to women and minorities first time. That was the wrong way. They should have started with trades. They should have dirtied their hands first. The whole idea is that when you get in this kind of a business, you need to have some aspect of what a particular part of that job is all about. So my position would be that if elected mayor, what I would be doing is that I would go with census tract. If in fact there was a 10% participation, it will be based on the definition of the minorities and women, and will be divided accordingly. And that's the way I would approach it as far as trying to respond to that area, with a strong emphasis on trade.
Thank you. David?
So there are a number of things that we can do to actually enhance the access that minority and women-owned businesses have to city contracts. A big part of it is looking at what we're actually able to give to minority and women contractors right now. If we look at where we're having successes and build on that, that's going to be one of the most appropriate ways that we're going to be able to build this type of business. So look at the contracting that we're doing and make sure that the subcontracts, the way that we're breaking up the jobs, are appropriate so that folks that are owning these types of businesses can take them on. Because one of the challenges for these businesses is a lot of them are smaller. They're not general contractor businesses. They can serve as subcontractors in a lot of cases, but there aren't as many that can do the full service. So finding ways to split the contracts up so that they're appropriately sized and scaled for these businesses is going to be a big factor in making it possible for them to actually compete for this business. On top of that, we need to make sure that the city itself is actually doing some development in terms of training and job development and workforce development, so the city internally can actually develop some competency that will help in facilitating bringing more minority and women into our business contracting.
Thank you, David. Now, Bim?
I completely agree with everything that David just said. it's, when you break it down, one of the big problems that we see is the city has sort of a different way of looking at capacity than I would like it to have. I think that when we look at capacity of contractors and then the subcontractors that get work through those main contractors, we need to come up with a way of measuring collaborative capacity from contractors that are in minority or women groups, so that we can have a way of defining what is our, team of 5 that were alone incapable of getting this job done, but together capable. And I think that's an approach that can be applied to a lot of different problems in Portland and a lot of different problems with how the city works with smaller Portland businesses to be able to achieve bigger goals. And so I think that it really would have to do with that climate of being able to define the collaborative capabilities of the industries that we're interested in supporting.
Thank you, Bim. This next question will be for Deborah, Bim, and Jesse. Portland is facing a rapid housing affordability crisis. In light of the state's legislature's recent changes in inclusionary zoning, what is your plan to implement that tool? We'll start with Deborah.
Okay, to implement the tool of our housing crisis. And it goes back to, in order to build housing and to create more housing, to build more housing, you first need to what? You need to know where the space is, because we're not going to build it on top of each other. So this goes back to being proactive, doing an analysis, finding out where every space within the city is located. Once we determine where every space is located, then we can be able to build. And also we want to look at developers locally within the state. By us building locally and we find in the spaces, we don't want to limit it to just one community. What we need to do is go within each of the communities, we have the 7 districts, and find out what are the needs for this particular community. How can you better get an answer of what's going on within a neighborhood without talking to the residents of that neighborhood? Once we find out where everything is at, we have meetings with the different neighborhood associations and say, okay, this is what we're planning on doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. Bim?
Yeah, I proposed mandatory inclusionary zoning when I started the campaign, and then we welcomed a lot of candidates to the campaign after that. It's an extremely important step that we've taken, but I do want to emphasize that I think that what the state has proposed is not far enough for Portland. I think that we need to look really seriously at it being both mandatory, but it being also a high volume of the new multifamily units that we do build, because we're sort of in a hole right now. And we need to also ensure that when we're looking at these sort of long-term answers, that we're putting them into place in a way that does continue beyond this cycle and beyond the next 10 years and through the entire life cycle of the buildings that we put up. So essentially there's a risk when we're in an emergency state to impose solutions that will expire, and then we'll find ourselves in the same hole again. So I would look to ensure that when we do any new multifamily units in Portland, we ensure for the entire period that that unit exists in Portland, those standards for low-income housing within them.
Thank you. This is another question that will be...
Hold on.
Oh, sorry, Jesse. Just...
You guys do know I'm here, right?
Yeah. Apologize.
Okay, so we're talking about, repeat the question, please.
Repeat the question. Portland is rapidly facing a housing affordability crisis. The state legislature recently changed its changes to inclusionary zoning. What is your plan to implement that?
How will I implement it? Check this out. I'll implement it very purposeful. I won't make the same mistake that we made during the war when we built Vanport and built all those housing complexes. Here's the thing. A lot of people are really short-sighted. For example, our brand new tree code gives a special exceptions for people building affordable housing. It's actually easier right now in the city of Portland to cut down a tree if you're building it for a future ghetto. We're not supposed to be building projects. As the urban expansion reaches out to East Portland, where I live on 131st and Division, it's very important that we take steps, longevity. We can't have these knee-jerk reactions where let's just build these cracker box complexes where everybody can live in them and it's all great, and then 10 years down the road, it's an absolute tenement. You know what I'm saying? We can't do that. We have to be purposeful. We have to work as we're going out, like I said in my last answer, to make sure we reach out specifically to minority businesses, long-term homeowners. We have to install protections to make sure that as the Langoliers reach further out there, man, 45 seconds comes quick. As we reach further, I got a minute 15 now, right? Work with me, sister. These are important answers. We have to make sure that it's purposeful and thoughtful and not just a reaction that we have because there's some crazy need. That's how we end up with all these bad policies. We have to really, really be purposeful to look towards the future of Portland.
Thank you, Jesse.
Can I have that when we're done?
So this is another question about the affordability crisis, and this will be for Bruce, David, and Jules. What is your plan for affordable housing, and how will you make sure that the city of Portland has the tools it needs to carry out your plan?
Well, you know, again, I'm not trying to be evasive about trying to respond to these questions, but it's just not enough time to intelligently respond. And I don't want to be on the record making a statement that, in fact, I've got to first deal with the issues in order to accomplish whatever mission that I am. My track record will show you that, in fact, I have the background, if you will, to basically, well, get the job done. But in this particular case situation here, that's a good question. But the idea is that maybe you have to build up. The price of homes are going up. The price of land's going up. There's a lot of. We're in a very complex situation right now, and I just can't give you an answer to try to solve the problem within this minute and a half. I really just can't. Check my track record. Thank you.
David?
So this is a really big part of the platform that I've created for Portland, and the most important parts of this are tenant protections to make sure that people are not displaced from the housing that they're already in. We need to stop the bleeding. But then we need to make sure that the housing that we create is something that people will actually be able to live in and enjoy for a very long period of time. Ben was talking about the life cycle of the buildings, and that's the kind of time scale we need to be thinking on, is 50 years plus. We need to be able to build affordable housing that's going to be affordable for the full life cycle of the building, because the affordable housing that we have been building expires in a very, very short period of time. So we want to make sure that we have community-owned housing, that way it's protected from market forces so that it doesn't get driven up in price by speculation, and that we want to make sure that these are managed by tenants, so that people have some control over the place that they're living and actually have an investment and an ownership stake in the place that they're living. For people that are looking to transition out of rental and into ownership, we need to put in place more land trusts. We have a local organization called Proud Ground that is doing some work in this area, but we need to do a lot more to make sure that there is enough options for affordable home ownership in our city. It's a pathway for people to actually get into owning their own home and land. And ultimately, we need to look at the full range of people who are trying to find housing in Portland and make sure that there is an affordable option for everybody based on their income. We have a lot of people in this community that are on fixed incomes or that have no flexibility in their income. They need to have a place to live so they don't have to leave.
Thank you, David. Now, Jules?
We have a shortage of affordable housing in Portland. It's very simple. And when we talk about affordable housing, oftentimes the phrase affordable housing refers specifically to subsidized affordable housing. We have a lot of tools and mechanisms to build affordable housing that's subsidized, that is at the sort of 60 to 80% of median family income range. But we don't have enough of the 0 to 30% of median family income range. And that's where we need to concentrate a lot of our efforts. We need to do that in two ways. One, we need to bring down cost, and there's models that are out there that are building right now that are reducing the cost per door of affordable housing from what can sometimes be $200,000, $300,000 a door down to $60,000, $80,000 a door. That's a big decrease. But second, we need a dedicated revenue stream for housing. I support what the Welcome Home Coalition is proposing. I think we need voters to pass in November a dedicated revenue stream for affordable housing. But we also need more affordable market rate housing. It's not just about the subsidized affordable housing, because if we don't have market rate housing that's affordable, you can't build subsidized affordable housing fast enough to keep up with the increases in the market. That means bringing back things like duplexes, triplexes, garden home apartments that are neighborhood scale, that are woven into the fabric of our community. Our zoning currently prohibits that. We need to bring that back in R5 zoning, and we need to have incentives to build that kind of housing.
Thank you, Jules. That concludes kind of the questions that were pre-prepared, and now we have questions that I've received from the audience tonight. And these questions will be asked to each candidate, and I will tell you, I'll give you the order after I read the question. So the first question that came from the audience tonight was, what sort of transportation traffic improvements do you feel would be the most cost-effective way to relieve Portland's traffic congestion? And we will start this question with David.
So there are a lot of things that we can do to improve our transportation infrastructure and to improve the traffic situation. One of the biggest things we can do is to actually get more people living closer to where they are trying to travel to. One of the biggest problems that we've had that's impacted the traffic on our streets is the displacement of people out of our city. So actually bringing more housing into the inner city and making sure that we concentrate housing around where we actually have good transit access is going to be a big factor in making sure that we don't bring more traffic onto our streets. If we keep on going on the path we've been going, we're going to keep displacing people, and the traffic is only going to get worse. Now, there are some investments that we need to make in terms of the streets themselves, but there are a lot of other things that we can do that are going to be much more cost effective to improve the traffic situation. Making it easier for people to bike, making sure that we have comprehensive access to sidewalks and to bike lanes throughout our city so that people have easy access to use their bicycle or to get to transit using the sidewalks. And on top of that, we need to make sure that we're making an investment in things that allow people not to have to travel at all. And this is where I talk about fiber optic internet for Portland. Municipal fiber is something that will actually bring our city into the 21st century. We are way behind the rest of the world on internet infrastructure, and if we allow private industry to build it, we will not have control over it for the long term. If we build municipal fiber optic internet in Portland to allow people to telecommute, it'll also bring a huge boost of business for healthcare, for the tech industry. It's going to be a boon for our city.
Thank you. Bruce?
Okay, as far as that particular issue is that I think we've got a question mark in terms of how does the cars and the bicycle mix. You know, I'm at an age factor that I need my car, and there's a concern about the bicycles, if you will, in terms of in terms of how do they fit, if you will, within our environment, and who's paying for it. So I guess I don't know. I'm still puzzled with that particular issue. It's still a serious issue, but the difference between cars and bicycle is a major issue, and it needs to be discussed more. Thank you.
Thank you. Jules?
Well, one of the first things that we can do on transportation infrastructure is actually something that all of you can do. And we're going to have a vote here on the May ballot around a temporary 10-cent a gallon gas tax increase. And I support that, and I hope that you all will consider voting for that as well. It's going to be very important. But let me be very clear. That's going to only solve a piece of the puzzle. It raises about $10 million a year. Our gap in annual maintenance is $44 million a year. And to bring our roads up to good or better condition would require $125 million a year for the next 10 years. That's a lot of money. So we can't build our way out of it. We have to have more options in the transportation system to make sure that people have choices. First of all, we need to start investing not just in paint on streets, but on the kinds of bicycle infrastructure like protected bike lanes that make it safer for people to be on the roads and do a better job of separating bicycle and automobile transportation. We also need more sidewalks and safer places for people to cross the street, rapid flashing beacons and those sorts of things. Where I live, my son, when he's old enough, will attend Capitol Hill Elementary School. We don't live very far from there, but there's no safe way for me to walk my son to school, as I did when I grew up in inner southeast Portland. And that's going to mean another car on the road, potentially. That gives people choice and option, and we need a revenue stream to be able to help do that.
Thank you. Deborah?
One of the things that I would suggest would be the technology, streamlining when you're trying to get onto a freeway. Every place doesn't have a light that says come and go, come and go. You're taking these chances. So all of a sudden you have so many cars piled up there. And what I'm about to say now may sound a little asinine, but parking. How many times have you driven around, circled and circled and circled, trying to get into a parking, but you can't because there are so many cars, and then the cars begin to line up, and this slows up the process. Exiting and parking, those things cause transportation issues. And also, because there is a lot of transportation between Portland and Salem and so forth, I know everything costs money, but over a long period of time, if there was a transportation, our MAX or buses that went between Portland to Salem, how many cars would that take off the road? And well, basically, and encouraging jobs. Sometimes employers have jobs that are within different areas. If you can encourage the employees and employees encourage their employers, may I transfer to this area? It's within this many. Thank you. You get it.
Thank you. Bim?
Yeah, I think David's right in pointing out that it may seem counterintuitive, but transportation is very much tied to housing. And that's a really, really key thing to remember here as we're seeing both of those things in ratio to each other get out of control in a way that we really don't want them to. I think that some of the answers are going to have to come from an understanding that the future of Portland is not in subsidizing vehicle traffic. The future of Portland will be in mass transit, and it will be in bicycle transit. So I think that it's important for us to set up sort of standards for that. What means a safe bike lane to a Portlander? And we need to find that answer and then start implementing it. What means good public transit? How do we keep those costs down for someone that needs to take a MAX every day? How do we make sure that rubber tire service to neighborhoods is frequent enough that it makes sense for someone to use instead of using a car? We need a baseline standard for transportation in Portland. So I think that would be the first step. And then from there, as far as investment goes and the dollars that we need, we can look at regional answers of people that are living outside of Portland for cheaper rent, but working here and commuting here. We need to force the hand of those people to use our public transit.
Thank you, Bim. Jesse?
This is kind of a hard one because we all agree looking for transportation solutions isn't hard. So of course we have to cut down on our commute. But what that means is that we need more businesses that are outside. I live in East Portland, and the morning bus that goes that way is empty. And then the bus that goes that way is full every morning. East Portland shouldn't just be a place where the workers live. There should be actual jobs out there. I'm going to talk quick because I know this lady's on me. We really need a bicycle infrastructure. It's terrifying. I ride my bike. I'm not like a bicycle dude, but I like to ride my bike, and it's terrifying out there. And so I have a lot of thoughts about keeping bicycles off the main arterials and keeping cars off the secondary streets. But I'd like to take my 20 seconds I have to say no more free parking. If you want to drive your car around, pay for that. Seriously, sorry if you guys don't like that. And then second, when we talk about a gas tax, I'm disappointed that the best thing that could come out of our local legislation is regressive tax. Why wouldn't we have a progressive tax? Why would everybody have to pay 10 cents a gallon when we should have your first gallon cost 6 cents, your second gallon cost 7 cents, your third gallon cost 8 cents, and so on?
Thank you, Jesse. Our next question from the audience is, what ideas do you have to help rebuild and repair relationships between the city employees unions and the Bureau and the Bureau of Human Resources? And we'll start that question with Bruce.
Well, again, we're talking about people, and that can be a very difficult situation. But I will say this, that as far as the trades are concerned, as far as the unions are concerned, they are very much in the human elements of the individual because they're trained that way. On the other side of the spectrum, again, you're talking about working environments aspect of it, and in that particular environment, people are having their views on and I run a small business myself, and it's not an easy task. But if you lay out, if you will, specifically what the task is for that particular individual, they tend to be well. Then things works out a little bit better. And the union has its own identity in its own way. Thank you.
Bim?
Can you ask the question again? I may just not have an answer for this, but I'd like to hear it again.
What ideas do you have to help rebuild and repair relations between the City Employees Union and the Bureau of Human Resources?
Yeah, I don't have an answer to that I think would be fair to put on record. I mean, basically, on a higher level, I would say that I support a people's right to organize and argue for fair wages. I believe in the human right to have enough money in the society that we made up to be able to live happily. I don't know how much it relates to that question, but I think that that's an important thing to remember, that we should have city government that believes in people's rights to live a prosperous life, and I think that that's sort of where I would stand on it. But honestly, I don't know enough about that issue to tell you, here's your silver bullet.
Thank you. Deborah?
Well, I've been on both ends. I have been a member of a union. I'm currently a member of a union. I have been a manager with employees, being affiliated with the union. And it's all basically leading by example. It's being the person you are. That's why it's so important that whoever we have, well, not whoever we have, that's why it's so important that when I am mayor of Portland, I am going to lead by example. When you see me one day, I'm going to be the same way to the next day and the next year. People tend to follow their leader. So if the leader has bad attitudes, bad relationships, bad behaviors, then everyone else is going to just assume this is acceptable. So sometimes you cannot change behaviors, but if behaviors observe your behaviors, then that can make a whole world of difference. That was one of my key items that I had planned to do when I become mayor, is build relationships among the commissioners, among the councilors, because if we cannot effectively work together, how are we going to be able to focus on these issues that we have within our city? Thank you.
Jules?
Well, you may have actually seen in the Oregonian today that this is an issue that's very important to me and that I take very seriously, because we've seen a lot of challenges between our unions at the city and HR and labor relations. We've also seen examples of what can happen when we have a labor force and management that is working well together. And in fact, at Multnomah County, during our negotiation process with our local bargaining unit, Local 88 of AFSCME, it was actually because we had a process that we had folks on both sides of the table talking to each other. It doesn't mean it doesn't get contentious at times, but folks talking to each other, that it was the union that brought forward the idea that we move to a $15 an hour minimum wage for county employees. And we thought, hey, that's a great idea. We should do that. And so we implemented it and created the first jurisdiction to go to $15 an hour minimum wage. We did something similar with paid family leave, which I find very important. So when I'm mayor, one of the things that I'm going to do is make sure that we are having a labor relations team at the city that reports directly to the mayor. The buck needs to stop with the mayor. We've got a lot of people that are empowered to say no. We need someone that's empowered to say yes. I also think that means staffing changes as we do restructuring, and I've committed to do some of those staffing changes because ultimately we need a cultural change.
Thank you. Jesse?
Yeah, could you repeat it one more time? Since how come I only get 45 seconds every time I get 5 minutes?
It's because I'm asking the question.
All right.
What would you do? What ideas do you have to rebuild and repair relations between city employee unions and the Bureau of Human Resources?
So here's one of those culture change answers. I strongly support the unions insofar as the fact that the unions are the only organization which has the power and the infrastructure to challenge our government. You know what I'm saying? So, sorry to say that. So what you need to do is make sure that at every opportunity you are supporting the unions, even though the Human Resources Department falls under the mantle of the mayor's office and City Hall. It's still important that you stand up and use your voice and your seat as an advocate for unions, because when the unions fall, we have nothing left. Like, really, when the unions are gone, we have nothing gone. Can I use my 20 seconds to say, screw the golf courses? All right? I've been saving that one up when I had some extra time. Yeah, I don't care about your golf courses.
David?
So the relationship between our unions and our Human Resources Bureau has deteriorated over a fairly long period of time. This is not something that happened overnight. And we've gotten to the point where resolving just basic grievances with the unions has become a very contentious process where we're actually spending a lot of resources that are not being wisely used. And I think Jules is right. This is going to be a matter of the leadership setting the tone and making it clear that that is no longer the process that we want to go through. It's a waste of effort for everyone. We really need to get to the point where we can work with the unions in a cooperative fashion, where we're able to actually sit down at the table and work these issues out and not spend years hashing them out through arbitration and other processes that are soaking up just far too much expensive attorney time out of our city. So I think really it comes down to setting the ground rules at the very beginning, that's just not how we're going to operate, that's not how we want to deal with conflict with our union, so that it shouldn't go through this adversarial process unless all other efforts have failed. And that's going to take a mayor that's willing to kind of get down and dirty and kind of push to make sure that we don't end up with the inertia of this process taking us back to the same place.
Right, thank you. You know, we're actually doing pretty well on time, so I thought I'd just kind of throw in just a little easy question or lighthearted question. You know, what I would like to ask each of you, and this will be just a quick, 20-second answer. Hopefully that works for everybody. What is your favorite part or place about Portland? We'll start with Deborah and just work our way this way.
My favorite part about Portland?
Place or part, what do you like most about Portland?
Okay, what I like most about Portland is that I would say the people. You never know what conversation is going to come from someone. There's so much that we can talk about regarding our city. Conversation.
Thank you. Jesse?
My favorite part about Portland is that it's small enough that if you were some kind of scoundrel, everybody would know, and if you were a hero, everybody would high five you everywhere you go.
David?
I think it has to do with the people, as Deborah said. And I think beyond that, I think it has to do with the sense of community that we have here. That really is, to me, the most special thing about Portland, is the sense that we're all in this together, that we all have a common goal here, and that if we work together, we can achieve the things that we wish to.
Yeah, this is why I'm running for mayor. It's arts and music. That creative class of Portland is what I think has made us the city that we are. And I think, arts and culture is how society expresses morality, and we do that very well here.
So I came home the other night, and there was this envelope resting against my door, and when I opened it up, there was a note inside from my dad that said, "I found this, and I wanted you to have it." And I pulled out the certificate for the brook that he bought me in Pioneer Square in 1984. And to me, that's a real emblem of Portland, a civic center for civic dialogue. And it happened not by fiat, but by everybody buying a brick. And funny fact, at the time, the mayor actually opposed the creation of Pioneer Square.
And I would agree with all of them as far as I'm concerned. It's just a beautiful place to live. Again, I was in the Marine Corps for 10 years. I came here as a Marine recruiter, and I stayed around, and I'm here, and I'd like for it to continue to be the city of roses. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I really like the Shanghai Tunnel Bar. That's one of my favorite places.
I didn't ask about favorite bars.
All right, question 3. How would you continue to work on the pay equality issue so that women can make equal pay to their to their male colleagues? And is paid sick leave for all? So I guess the question is how to work on pay equality, and I guess if you want to talk about the paid sick leave for all. And we'll start with David.
So one of the problems that we have in actually getting to equal pay is that some of our classifications need to be reharmonized. We have some classifications that are particularly popular with one gender or one group or another that aren't actually matching with similar skilled positions elsewhere in terms of compensation. So we need to look across the board at the classification and make sure that we harmonize wage rates so that there aren't that type of discriminatory changes between different classifications. And really, that's the biggest thing that we need to do, is to make sure that we have those things in place. Beyond that, it comes down to the hiring and the process that we do to bring people into the system, to make sure that our hiring pools are balanced, that they're gender neutral, that we have a fully representative hiring pool for all positions that we're hiring for, so that we don't lose out on the opportunity to get diversity at that very first step. And then we need to carry that through and make sure that we have a balanced, diverse process, that people of a diverse nature are going through the process all the way to the hiring phase, so that we're not missing out on any segments of our community. But ultimately, it's the harmonization of wage categories that's going to be the biggest factor.
Thank you. Jesse?
He totally stole what I was going to say. I really don't have an answer for that, but this is another one of those culture kind of questions. Like, I could come up here and give you some answers. And we do need representational districts. That was going to be my answer to that question. I don't have a fancy answer for that, but I'll tell you this, I'll always be on the right side of any kind of legislation like that. And anytime anybody comes up and presents that to me, and they have a plan and they have a strategy, my office will always be open, and then you can sit down, you can explain it to me. But I'm not going to shine you guys on with some fancy answer that I just made up to sound like I was smart. I'm not that guy. Thank you.
Bruce?
Well, in that particular case, I'm a restaurant owner right now, and I've been in business for probably about 80% of my life here in Portland. And with my restaurant right now, I do as I'm told. My wife controls the deal, so it's a fair deal. As far as I'm concerned, you identify the tasks, and if the person does the task, you pay them the same. It's not an issue with me.
Thank you. Jules?
Let's be clear. In 2016, women still earn 73 cents on the dollar for the same work. That's unacceptable. And so one of the things that we need to do is have clear data and clear standards throughout city government, throughout our economy, but to be able to track and to have clear audits of that, to understand where we're falling behind. I've pushed for similar audits at Multnomah County and got them. We need to do the same thing at the city. I support paid sick leave, but what you didn't ask about is paid family leave. I led the creation of a paid family leave policy at Multnomah County, and I took my full paternity leave. I would have gotten it anyway, but I led it for employees. My full paternity leave, because it's really important that men in particular lead on family leave. Too often it's seen as a women's issue, and until men are taking leave and are out there advocating for family-friendly policies, then there will be employers that continue to perceive family-friendliness as a women's issue, and women will continue to be discriminated against in the workforce. So we need a cultural change, and we also need clear data and policies on it. And finally, in order to make these kinds of changes, we need more than a one-term mayor. We need a mayor who's going to be able to stick around. And I've pledged that if I'm elected mayor, this is the destination job. I'm not running for anything else for at least 8 years because I want to be a mayor who's going to see these kinds of changes through.
Thank you. Deborah?
Well, I'll have to stand on this one, because when we say men take lead, we're right there, we're sort of setting a trend right then. It should be an equal situation. We can't say men take lead, because what statement are we making? When we are managing operations, and whether it's a male or female who's managing operations, we need to do what's ethical, what's honest, and what's fair as far as promotions. And if we acknowledge that someone has the same qualities, the same skills, the same position, and is not making the same amount, then whether you're male or female, you need to have the courage and the boldness, regardless to who it is, and step up to the plate and says, we need to fix this issue. It's about changing behaviors. And I just want to say this, and I know my time is probably up. Thank you, Buckman community, and then League of Women Voters. We came a long way, but we are doing what today? We are voting so changes can occur. Changes will happen. Thank you.
Okay. Bim?
Yeah, data capture is super important with this. I think that we need metrics that reflect the realities And one of the best ways that we can do that as a municipality is through our city auditor's office. I think that there's a lot that our auditor can do to ensure that we know exactly how that, 70 cents on the dollar is actually presenting itself in our local employment. I think for initial action, it could be useful to look at a tiered system of attack. I would like to see the biggest corporations, the biggest employers who tend to be the biggest offenders of predatory employment practices. I'd like to go after them first. And I think that it's important that we have a mayor that's able to do that. I'm not taking money from special interest or big business. And I think that any candidate that is taking money from big business will not be able to tackle that kind of issue. I think that these issues of wage disparity and general disparity in our societies are growing as our political sphere has become out of reach to everyday people. And I stand for those everyday people in every way.
Thank you. Our next question for everybody is, how can Portland improve our livability with 200,000 more people coming here over the next 20 years? What resources do we need, and where will we get them? We'll start with David.
So livability in Portland is a big picture thing. So this is going to mean that we need to worry about having housing that people can stay in and that they're not displaced from, which is something that we've talked about a lot. But it also means that we need to make an investment in our parks. Park systems, particularly in the outer parts of our city, have not been fully developed. We're lacking park access for large parts of our city, and our parks really aren't connected in the way that they need to be. If we really want to have a livable city, people need to have safe ways to travel throughout the city, regardless of what transportation mode they're choosing. So we need to make sure that there are safe ways for people to walk and bike and get around the city. And those are going to be things that are going to contribute to livability in a very great way. Beyond that, we also need to look at how are we going to make sure that people have employment here so that they can continue to live here. Because on top of keeping costs under control, we do need to make sure that folks can come here and have an opportunity to work. So a big part of that is going to be partnering at the city level with educational institutions and with businesses in the community to facilitate pathways for folks, particularly folks that are coming out of our educational system and not getting the full set of skills that they're going to need to succeed in our community. We need to make sure that we follow up and have a pathway for them to be successful and to be able to stay in our community and make a good living. And that's going to be something that the city is going to have to work closely with businesses and with educational institutions to accomplish.
All right. Thank you. Jesse?
As respectful as I am to whatever emergency that Sarah and her family had, I'm kind of glad she's not here so I can steal her answers. So if we're going to fit 20,000 more people in this city, we have to explode the misconception that everything happens on that side of 39th or this side of 39th and this side of the zoo and this side of the Rose Garden. There's a beautiful city out here. We have a Max that'll take you all over the place. And so why I brought up Sarah is because she always talks about multiple city centers. So when I grew up, Eastport Plaza was a legitimate center of the city. Mall 205 was a decent center of the city. I mean, for Pete's sake, the Izzy's in Gateway was a decent center for the city. But now we have this culture behind City Hall that wants to just continue to infill. And what we need is infrastructure before infill, because we don't have to just have this one centralist mode of the city where 20,000 people have to fit in right here. There's a lot of beautiful spots in Gateway. Park Rose is a wonderful neighborhood. Further out Foster, I could go on all day. It's a beautiful city.
Thank you. Bim?
Yeah, so livability is about a lot of stuff, and it relates to pretty much every single thing that we've talked about. I'm going to talk to just the things in my life that have made me proud to be a Portlander, and those things are local business, and there are local communities that do things that mean something to them beyond their wallet and beyond their bank account. And I think that a lot of those spaces you can see as third spaces. That's somewhere that you go that's not where you make your living, and it's not your house. And those are typically mom and pop institutions, and I think to protect those communities, the best thing that we can do is stand up to their competitors, which are multinational corporations and big business, and we're seeing it in every level of Portland, there's a lot of interest in diverting the benefits of our growth to big business and away from small business. So I guess for livability, small business would be my main focus. I also agree with David that parks are extremely important, and I don't think that we see enough that they are the lungs of our city, and without them, we're going to suffocate.
Thank you. Bruce?
Well, you know, in all due respect, I've been here quite some time, and I'm sitting up here at 77 years old right now, so I've had some experience. I've been involved with the neighborhood associations for a number of times, and really, we've got some very smart people. We've got good people here in this city, and the associations, the neighborhoods are really where it's at. And if we can engage them and get their ideas, then all of us can live. Because as one would say, when you go through life, we're all different. We're all sorts of different kinds of individuals, and we need that input. We need that input on the table. So my position is that the whole idea is to give people the opportunity to engage. And as mayor, I want to listen, and I want to listen from the neighborhoods and get a definition in terms of what will Portland look like and how we will accept and live together.
Thank you. Jules?
Well, I think I began my opening statement talking about this very issue because it's a primary reason why I'm running for mayor. We do have an influx of hundreds of thousands, if not a million, new people over the coming decades, and we still have to have a city that works for everybody. And there's a couple of sides to that equation. One, within the city of Portland, we need more of an emphasis on affordability. We've talked about some of those strategies already tonight. We need more protections for renters. We need the kinds of things that are going to help protect people as costs rise. But the other side of that equation, because we aren't the most expensive city in the nation, but we are the most unaffordable city in the nation because of the ratio of income to the cost of housing. We need to have an economic development strategy that focuses on the missing middle of middle wage jobs. And that means supporting the kinds of local small businesses that make up our main streets and not those that are an outpost of Wall Street where we throw tax incentives and tax breaks just to lure corporations here. We need to make sure we have a strong local economic development strategy. But also it means working regionally as well. We're a regional economy. We're a regional housing market. The mayor of Portland can't view Portland as just an island. We have to have a mayor who's willing to reach out, work with the mayors of Beaverton and Hillsborough and Gresham and Troutdale and Wood Village, and create a regional strategy that is about creating a city and a region that works for everybody.
Thank you. Deborah?
Thank you. Excellent question. When we speak of livability, we have to ask ourselves, what does livability mean to me? Livability can mean numerous things. It can mean safety, security, community involvement, and definitely community and living within a community of choice. And it's also about having a healthy city, being able to go places and to get away and enjoy just being with people and those within your community, livability. Every 15 years, I believe it is, the city of Portland does a study, the livability of Portland. I was involved in I didn't do it, but I was able to dissect a report and analysis that was done. And when we dissected it, we realized that the consensus was not really what it was. When we looked at it and skewed it and so forth, we looked at where the surveys were sent and where the data came back. When we received them, the data that came in, it looked, oh, wow, real livability from those who responded. But all of the communities did not respond. The responses came from the more affluent communities. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, welcome, Ted. We're glad you could join us. Would you like me to repeat the question?
Sure, thank you.
So, how can Portland improve our livability with 200,000 more people coming here over the next 20 years? What resources do we need, and where will we get them?
That's a great question. How many minutes do I get?
You get a minute and 15 seconds.
All right, well, I'll take this in a slightly different direction. For me, the question is, with 300,000 more people coming here, the question is, where are they going to live? Will they be able to afford it? Where are they going to work? What kind of wages will they make, and will they have the education and job training that allows them to qualify for higher skill, higher wage jobs that we know are growing in our community? Where will the kids go to school? And what kind of education will those kids receive, and will they be economically viable based on the educational achievement they attain? With all these people moving here, we're not building more roads. We're not building more highways. So with increased congestion, if anybody drove around the last few days, it was already gridlocked. How are we all going to get around? What kind of transit systems do we need? When it comes to regional planning, what are we doing to ensure that the jobs aren't all being created in eastern Washington County and the affordable housing all the way in eastern Multnomah County with limited transit options available? Where do the resources come for transportation? I'd encourage you to go to tedwheeler.com, look at my website, the plans around transportation. When it comes to housing, look at my tenant bill of rights and my housing plan. When it comes to jobs, look at my 25 by 25 job plan, which includes education and training pathways to those jobs. That's impossible.
Yes, thank you.
Sorry I'm late. I did tell the organizers I actually wouldn't make it, but I appreciate being included here in the last few minutes. Thank you. And I'll join you at the Lucky Lab.
So we got time for just one more question here. What is the plan for future parking? What is the plan for future parking and traffic related to all new developments in the neighborhood? And we'll start with Deborah.
The plan for future parking, well, it appears that what some plans that are implemented right now is you have to park sometimes right in front of your house there. With new structures going up and apartments and complexes and condominiums, a lot of those are taking away a lot of parking from those of us who are those who already have homes within the communities. So the parking, we would need to look at coming up with parking structures so that we'll be able to park off the street, because right now we're taking away a lot of parking spaces, especially in some of the communities, that we're taking away some of the parking spaces from businesses, from some faith-based organizations and other groups where they're normally being able to have space to park, but there's none. So I would look at structures for parking so that we will still allow those who have ownership, not necessarily ownership, people to be able to pull in and to visit and to leave, but creating structures and looking at the revenues that we have to create some type of parking spaces, not just for automobiles, but for bicycles and scooters or whatever we have, creating structures going higher, because we can't go out.
Thank you. Bruce?
Well, in all due respect, here's another city. It's a very complicated issue. We need to get the information. In all due respect, you got to get, in essence, hiring a contractor and giving you some feel as to what can we do. Because what I see nowadays is as you're driving down the street, you're limited. I mean, we're getting quite a bit of buildings in the area. We got the bicycle situation. We got to deal with aspect of it. So how do you get the neighbors to feel comfortable about parking? It's a tough situation. Again, like I say, as mayor, I've got to get some sort of sense of what do we do. Again, that's basically all I can do right now with that piece. Thank you.
Jesse?
So we should get all the cars off our streets. And I know that's radical, and I know that it will never happen. That's why I'm comfortable taking that kind of stance. Cars are disgusting. They stink. They're dangerous. People who can't even push a shopping cart around Winco are driving 45 miles an hour, down these roads. People are dying on their bikes. So we really need a strategy that stops giving away free parking, stops using parking on our streets. I like Deborah's idea of parking structures, but I would rather no parking at all. We really need to start thinking futuristic. We can't just keep owning to these industrial complexes and trying to figure out how we can coexist with these disgusting industrial complexes and get elected for 4 years and just say whatever and kick the can down the road. We need visionary leadership that's going to be like, hey, this is Portland freaking Oregon. If there's anywhere that we can make, and that's getting real old, sister. I'll just stop right there. This is Portland, Oregon.
All right. Ted?
So first of all, I'd like to say I think it needs to be done on a neighborhood-by-neighborhood basis. I don't think you can paint with a broad brush. Different strategies work in different neighborhoods. If you're closer to the downtown core, you have better public transit options that are affordable. If you're chasing housing affordability to East Portland, you may have to drive because there aren't the same level and the same deployment of affordable transit options. In some neighborhoods, it might make sense to have annex parking in a structure the way Deborah had just described it. In other neighborhoods like Northwest Portland, their Northwest parking plan has been really successful. And it's pay for parking. It helps throughput in their business district, but people who live there actually have access to a permit that allows them to park. They're really happy with it. So I think the question really sort of gets back to Bruce's comment. What works best for this neighborhood? In the near term, people are going to drive. Longer term, we need to provide attractive, alternative, and affordable transit options that encourage people to get out of their cars. And by the way, there's sort of this longer term image, autonomous and linked vehicles could be a game changer in the very near future, and that's something we need to look towards too.
Thank you.
I love the paddles, by the way. That's
David?
awesome.
So there's a couple of different pieces here, but one of the big pieces is on-street parking throughout our neighborhoods. And Ted is right, it's going to vary neighborhood by neighborhood. Some neighborhoods, that parking is in very high demand, and in order to manage that parking so that it's available for folks, we need to make sure that the permitting system works well. And that means that permits for parking in your neighborhood need to be affordable. So some folks in the neighborhood are going to be able to afford $300 or $600 annually for parking access, but there are going to be some folks where that would be a prohibitive expense that would actually displace them from our neighborhoods. So we need to make sure that when we're imposing new fees for things that people have come to expect to get for free, that we're not doing it in a way that disadvantages the folks in our community that are already the most vulnerable economically. So I do support managing our parking resources more carefully and making sure that we manage those using cost to incentivize people to use transit as much as possible. But we need to make sure we do it in a way that doesn't negatively impact folks that have already made some investment relying on having those parking spaces available. So there's some trade-offs there we need to balance. When it comes to actually building parking structures, I think that's actually the wrong direction to go. I don't want to see us building more above-ground parking structures. It's a perverse incentive for people to drive more cars in the long term. And ultimately, we want to push towards more public transit and less single occupancy vehicles. If we're investing in parking, we're essentially guaranteeing that we're going to be driving more single occupancy vehicles.
Thank you. Jules?
Well, I used to live at 31st and Division, so I have a pretty acute sense of some of the parking challenges that are happening in the neighborhoods. One of the things that we need to do as we get a handle on our parking policy is to have a really clear sense of the data of where and how and what is driving parking challenges. So I can tell you anecdotally that at 2 a.m. I could park wherever I wanted. I could park directly in front of a building with no parking. Between 4 and 11 p.m., you had to park 6 blocks away. And that's in some sense evidence of the fact that a lot of it is demand coming to neighborhoods for businesses and shops and things like that. It may not be as directly related to parking. But we don't have a lot of great data on that. And so we need to make sure that we have good data and we're designing neighborhood-based solutions around that in coordination with the community so that we aren't going off in a direction that isn't fruitful. Ultimately, too, we also need to ensure that we have a better public transit system. We need to address some of the challenges that TriMet has. When it's $5 for a round-trip transit ticket, if it takes you more than 2 hours, and 2 people spending $5 each, that's $10 for a round trip on transit. That doesn't work for a lot of folks, and so we need to address the transit system. But finally, no matter what issue we're talking about, we need a mayor who's going to be independent, and that's why I've limited my campaign contributions to no more than $250 a person, because I believe that nobody should be sitting at the table with more seats than anybody else.
Thank you. Bim?
Lots of really great ideas up here. I think I can agree with every single thing that David Shore said about this issue. I think maybe what I would add to it is that there does need to be a general shifting of our thoughts about cars. I think that we need to realize that as the city grows and as the city gets denser, cars will become something that's a privilege to have. And when that happens, it excludes a lot of people from that privilege. And so it's, I think, our duty to not just propose alternatives that work, but alternatives that have a proof of superiority to vehicle traffic. We need our transit systems to work better than cars. We need our bikes to be safer. We need all of those things to be superior to vehicle traffic, or else it's not going to happen. All of the problems that we see are because right now the cheapest, fastest way to get around is in a car. And when it comes down to it, if we can't prove that it's better to take a bus, then those who have enough money to drive a car are going to keep driving. So I really would push to decentivize the vehicle traffic in Portland in a big way. It's really important that we get there so that everyone can afford to live here in a meaningful way.
Well, thank you. That concludes our questions for this evening. We will now allow for a 1.5-minute closing statements from each candidate, and we'll start with Bruce.
Well, thank you very much. Again, I apologize for the evasiveness, but like I said, I need to spend more time on issues. I don't know anything about the city. I'm running for mayor. I've got the management skills, and I think I can do a good job, but I'm going to make sure that the neighbors are engaged as far as the issues are concerned. Many, many issues, and you really just can't discuss them in one. I've thought about the idea of dividing the city into 4 different segments. And the idea was, and also maybe identifying an auditor with that person, and then assigning, if you will, a commissioner to each one of those districts. And then that the information as far as a solution to those issues would be sent up to the mayor's office. Then we'd have an open discussion to the citizen, prioritize those issues because we got so much money. We got so much money, and then we will basically respond to those issues accordingly. So that's really my point. And again, I thank you very much for putting this on. I appreciate it very much. Check out my website too, broussardpdx.com. Thank you very much.
Jules?
I want to thank you all for coming tonight, for the great questions and for engaging in the discussion. I want to thank my fellow candidates up here as well. I learned a lot from this process. Fundamentally, I love Portland. I love this city, and I know all of you do too. It's why you're here and why you're engaged in this. And this has been a community that has given me so much, and I want to give back. I grew up going to the Volunteers of America daycare facility just up the street from here. I had the honor of representing this community in the state legislature and now at the county commission. And ultimately, we need a mayor who's going to work for everybody so that this can be a city that works for everybody, where we have housing affordability, where we have good paying jobs, where we have transportation that works no matter how you get around, and where we have world-class public schools to be able to put our kids into. That's a vision, I think, for this city that we can get behind. But in order to do it, the mayor can't do it alone. We've got to have the engaged community that's always made Portland, Portland, doing it together. And that's what I believe this city is capable of. That's why I've capped my contributions, so that I ensure that nobody is speaking in my ear with a megaphone that's louder than anybody else. And I'm going to be a mayor that works very closely with all of you to ensure that we have a city that, as we have an influx of new people, continues to be the kind of place that we love and that we can call home. I'd be honored to have your vote, and I'd be honored to have your support. If you want to learn more, check out julesbailey.com, and I look forward to working with you. Thank you.
Ted?
Well, thank you very much for having me here. And again, I apologize. I had other commitments, but I feel privileged to be allowed to participate here in the end. You know, Portland is a jewel. It's a gem. It is an incredible city. It's somehow captured the zeitgeist and the imagination unlike virtually any other community in America. I'm very proud to be somebody who was born and raised here. I'm a product of the public education system. I feel like I got a world-class education here, and I'd like to see other kids have that same opportunity. My wife and I, like everybody in this room, we feel like we have an investment in the future of this community, which, by the way, I think is very, very bright. We've chosen to raise our young daughter here, and we're excited about that future, but we have to be honest with ourselves. We're also struggling with some big city issues. The homelessness crisis, the housing affordability crisis, too many people being priced out and moved out. The city is struggling with infrastructure and providing basic services to the community, leveraging the breadth and diversity of our community. We're 6 years into an economic recovery, but a lot of people in this city are still not participating in that economic economic recovery. The challenge for the next mayor is going to be, how do we make this transition towards being a big city while maintaining the livability that you asked about? If you elect me mayor, I'm going to bring the same skills that I used when I was the presiding officer of the board that meets in this room, the same skills I use as the head of the state treasury, and I'll continue to do what I've always done, bring the community together, work with you to solve our most pressing problems. Thanks for having me here tonight.
Bim?
Yeah, inspiring stuff. I think that we all want all of that, and I agree. I think that how we get there is a little bit different than how we've gotten to where we are now. I think it's important that we see ourselves as a city that's an example to the world of how you can be a major metro. I think that that's our future, is being, the first city to figure it out before it was too late. The first city to realize that its identity was more important than the investment of any outside group. I think I've harped enough on my campaign finance stuff already, and I won't continue to do that right now, but it really is important that we elect a mayor that can stand for Portland's cultural identity. I believe that I do that through being a small business owner and being somebody that plays in a band and somebody that walks down the street and says hi to a random person. I think that we need somebody who can stand for Portland because they're willing to have a backbone when it comes to standing up to those that are coming here to try and steal our profits. Essentially, we need a mayor that'll say what I'll say. Well, how about this? Any corporation that cannot pay fair wages and comparable taxes to local business is a corporation that functions explicitly on the exploitation of the communities it does business in. That's what I stand for, is people in that way.
So I'd say there's a kind of a unique position that I occupy in this race. I come at this with a professional background as an attorney, so I understand the law, and I understand that that's the basic function of what a mayor is going to do, is to create laws and to make sure that those laws are enforced in a way that's fair and equitable for everyone in our city. But I also come with the background of someone like Bim, who's been an artist in our community, who's performed as a musician, who's been up at 1:30 in the morning watching the patrons trickle out of the bar as they close while I'm packing up my musical gear. So I understand the struggle of the creative class at the same time that I've actually studied the policy and the laws and the procedures that brought us to where we are. And unfortunately, if we don't take a new approach, we are not going to be able to solve these problems in the near term. We need to actually try something new, and that means trying new leadership that isn't inculcated in the existing systems, that hasn't already bought in to the things that we are using now as our tools. Because the reality is the tools that we're using now haven't fixed the problem, and we've been doing this for a long time. If we try something new and try something different, there's a good chance that we actually can solve these problems if we work on them together, if we get together as a community, if we set aside the campaign contributors and the big corporations that really do have a louder voice in our city, exclude those voices just long enough so we can hear one another, so we can actually hear the voices of the people of Portland. And that's what I want to make happen for our city. I believe that we have a bright future if we work together. If you want to learn more, visit portlandforshore.org, and you can read about my plan. Thank you.
All right, so if you guys haven't figured out, I'm not the candidate that's going to come up here and give myself a massage. I'd like to thank Margaret and Susan and Adam for putting this on. I'd like to thank the Buckman Community Association, Buckman Neighborhood Association. I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters, and I would like to thank all of you people who probably had something way better to do tonight. But it's people like you who are active and engaged voters which makes this whole process beautiful. So I'm not gonna tell you anything great about myself. You can find me. I'm not hard to find. I'm gonna tell you that I really wish we would talk about sex trafficking tonight. We have a disgusting problem with that in this city. It should be the priority of our mayor, and I wish we would have talked about it tonight. We haven't talked about marijuana at all. You know, there's millions and millions of dollars of revenue that we can put into all these holes when we sit up here and figure out what programs to cut and what new taxes to implement on people. Let's not forget, pot creates jobs. You know, there's 700 zombie homes in this city that are owned by the banks that aren't for sale. Don't do it, sister. I'm not going to listen today. Mark Kruger, Mark Kruger needs to be fired right now. That's not how you build a relationship with a community, by having a Nazi fetishist cop running the vice department and being in charge of evictions of families of color. We don't need to tear down those reservoirs. We cannot afford another $200 million on our water bills. You know, we talk about a lot of these problems, but water intersects in all of those. And up the road is the Columbia Generating Station. I'll say it again. That's Fukushima, and nobody's talking about it. It sits on 11 fault lines, and if that blows, all the seismic retrogrades won't matter. This place will become a wasteland.
Thank you.
You can't kick me out now. It's over.
Time's up.
I'm going to take that leadership role. Okay, Jesse, time's up. Well, I want to again thank you, the Buckman Community Neighborhood Association, the League of Women Voters. When I came into the race, I was a new face, still am somewhat a new face. I'm considered by Oregonians and some others as not a top contender. I enjoy working with my colleagues, no reflection against them. Being a top contender does not mean that you have the leadership skills. I'm in the race because I have the leadership skills. I have the ability to effectively work with all people from all communities. And as you can see, my brand, I believe in single-member districts. By having single-member districts, we're getting better representation from our 95 neighborhoods. The neighborhoods would elect someone from your community to be that representative. Whenever there are concerns going on within that neighborhood, every neighborhood has commonalities, and every neighborhood has some things that are unique. But you would be able, that representative who's a reflection of that neighborhood, who you have elected, we would come and discuss what's going on with that neighborhood to take care of it. When you have single-member districts, all the things we've covered tonight, it incorporates, it's under the umbrella of homelessness, the environment, house density, the sharing economy, infrastructure, economic development. All of these would fall in that category. And closing, thank you. Thank you very much. Deborah Harris, vote Deborah Harris. Thank you.
All right, well, how about a round of applause for our candidates? Thank you for listening. We have a few final reminders from the League of Women Voters.
Thank you, and thank you all for coming. We remind you that the last day to register to vote is April 26th. Ballot mailing will begin April 27th. Ballots must be returned so that they reach the elections office by May 17th, and postmarks do not count. For additional information about this election, please look for copies of the League of Women Voters Voter's Guide in public libraries, in the PCC libraries, at Multnomah County Elections, and the New Seasons Market. Links online to information at our website is www.lwvpdx.org. And we're grateful to our sponsors tonight, the Multnomah Bar Foundation, Metro East Community Media, and Paloma Clothing. So please remember to vote. Your vote counts. And
Well, we're very glad you attended. I want to thank all of the candidates for being here, for running for this very important position. I think we need to get a big round of applause for our moderator, Adam Zucker, if we could have that, please. Who, by the way, also ordered the pizza. I'll be getting back to that in a second. And also, please, a round of applause to the ladies of the League of Women Voters. They're phenomenal. They got this thing organized. They were, we're pretty informal. We just kind of like, come on, everybody. We invite everybody and then, ask a bunch of questions. But these guys made all the signs. They had everybody sit up there. They had it all, the cameras running. So let's give a big round of applause to the League of Women Voters. Please, all the work they do.